Hello and welcome back to Road to Master. Hope you all have an amazing day. We are here going over a game that I played recently in the club championship that we do every year. The time on this game was an hour flat plus 10. I'm against a 2000 rated player, which is insane, and I have the white pieces. So this player is really strong. I was very scared. I didn't do any prep for it, which is great. So I didn't have high expectations for this game, to be honest, but it turned out to be a very fun, very sort of classical King's Indian attacking style sacrificial game, which was really cool, and I ended up winning it somehow, which is amazing. And at the minute now, I'm actually leading the club championship, which is crazy to say that there's like a 2200 rated player there and several 2000s. So I am amazed, to be honest. Anyway, let's get on with the game. Accuracy first. I had an 84.0% accuracy versus my opponent who had a 79.4% accuracy. And as we discussed, a King's Indian attack. So I like the King's Indian attack as white because my goal basically is to play the King's Indian as both black and white against everything. Now you can't exactly do that, but you can get pretty close, and I think we got pretty close on this. This is a very classical example of this opening. So if you are interested, here it goes. Now you can come into the King's Indian attack from e4, from like the French where you play e4 d3, but I like playing it from knight f3 because it's you ignore all the e4 lines from like the Sicilian, Scandinavian, Caro, stuff like that. And then e5 as well. I don't really like playing against e5, so knight f3 prevents that. And then we sort of just stick to our guns, really. We fianchetto our bishop. They can play d4, d5, c5, and they could potentially play e5 at some point after they play like knight c6. And this would go more into a reversed King's Indian defense. There's a lot of names and stuff, but it's interesting. Luckily, this went into more of a standard King's Indian attack, where my opponent played e6. We play d3, e6, castle, and then knight e2 here, I think is a key move, actually, if you want to play this as white. You can play knight c3, but I like the option of playing c3 if necessary to shore up our pawns, because what our goal is really in the King's Indian attack is to get sort of like an advanced French situation, where we get c3 and we're trying to lock up the center as much as possible so we can go for this all-out attack on their king side. So that's why I like knight d2, bd2. There is also this second idea of going knight bd2 to knight f1 to knight h2 to knight g4, which is a maneuver, but it actually works and it's surprisingly effective. If you want more information about that, I'd highly recommend going over Bobby Fischer's games in the King's Indian attack. He does it masterfully, right? Because he's one of the best players ever, but it's ridiculous. So we go knight bd2, and the other idea of that is we're looking for the e4 break. So we want to go rook e1 as well. Our opponent castles. Rook e1, play e4, and yeah, just lock it up after that because we get e5 with a tempo on the knight as well. Now my opponent, I think, played this slightly slow and let me do whatever I wanted really in the center, which isn't necessarily bad, but I think it plays into my sort of style really, where I do get what I want and I'm able to go for this crazy kingside attack. Bishop b7 with b6, quite a common idea, but I would say usually I think that happens once the center's locked up, because I think the bishop going to a6 even is quite good, sort of stopping any of these maneuvers, especially if the rook isn't on e1, can be quite annoying, because you've got some pins with like takes and stuff, but it's all fine. We get e5 in, kick the knight, and the knight goes back. Another thing, very similar to the advanced French, like queen c7, very natural because you're looking at this file if this ever opens up, and you're looking at probing e5 as well, maybe with some f6 ideas at some point. So the knight goes back. These knights are just going to go on these two squares. Ideally, maybe you would have your bishop on d6. Obviously, be careful of the fork. But then you can go back to c7 and get the queen on b8, and you've got even more pressure on this e5 pawn. We start with this crazy maneuver, knight f1, and this is still a book move, by the way. And the book moves sort of go all the way up to the crazy sacrifice, which is really cool, actually. Knight c3, like we said. h4, very key idea in the King's Indian attack. You want to be looking at pushing your pawns. You want to attack the king. That's the whole point. It's the King's Indian attack. But you also want to allow this square for your knight. Now you can, I think, technically do either knight. Say if this knight was back on d2. You could do h4, and then knight h2, and then put this knight here and this knight here. But you sort of need this knight constantly on e5 to protect it, so you don't really have that choice in a lot of lines. h4, the queen goes to c7, attacking this pawn again. Bishop f4, defending it once again. And bishop f4 is really useful, actually, because it sort of discourages any f6 ideas right away because of the pin on the queen. Very scary. Although, technically, I think it could be done because the bishop could go back, but then you've got this runaway pawn, and it's not going to be nice. So, bishop f4, very, very good move. And then it allows any queen d2 sort of battery ideas if they play something like h6. Spoiler alert. Rook e8, I think is quite natural, actually. The computer likes rook d8. I don't know what the difference is. But you do also like this f8 square for either the knight or the bishop to basically come and swing into a more defensive role. But sometimes you want the rook on the f-file to push the f6, f5 ideas, but I don't really know the difference. You know, there's a lot of very, very subtle variations in this opening. But the general ideas are the same. Knight h2, like we said. And then d4, very, very interesting. You're cutting off my support for the e5 pawn. And you're opening up these bishops. So we're going to have a huge, huge battle on this diagonal. I think the battle slightly favors me. Because if you ever take, as long as you've got like no other follow-up attack, basically I'm just going to be able to swing my rook around, right? And then push these pawns, and the rook's going to even be able to join in the attack at some point, which I think is quite good. And it also loses control of e4 if the rook ever wants to come across this way, which becomes some ideas in this game at some point as well. h5. I really like h5 as an idea. h6, sorry. No, that is h5. Yeah, h5. I really like h5 as an idea here because I really want to play knight g4. But if we go here straight away, I think h5 ideas, while potentially looking a bit weak, slightly cuts off my attacking chances, and it goes into a more positional game where we've got to sort of bring this knight all the way back to e4 in order for it to get in. And it's fine, but it's very slow and it's not what I really want. So I think h5 straight away sort of prevents that idea, and it also allows some quick h6 moves if we need it. There you go, h6. I think necessary to cut off my access to g5 because I would love a knight there to hit both f7 and h7. Crazy, crazy stuff. Knight g4, very natural as well. We've completed our development of this knight, going all the way around to g4. And now we are looking scary, I think. This pawn's never going anywhere. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders. And they can only ever have really a maximum of 3. If they did it a different way, maybe they could have 4 defenders. But like we said, we've got 4 attackers and we've got 4 defenders. So this pawn's not going anywhere unless they do like an f6 break. But especially with h6 being played, it looks very weakening on the king at the minute. Knight b4, interesting move. And I actually do quite like this move. So it's annoying. It's threatening c2. With the fork on the rooks. The problem is I don't really care about these rooks at all. I am planning on sacrificing material anyway with either bishop takes or knight takes, so I don't care about these rooks. But the hidden thing I sort of didn't really see is knight to d5 here. Actually quite annoying. because then like f5, f6 ideas become a bit nicer because the knight can take back en passant. Obviously, deal with the queen. Discovered attack first. And it's sort of blocking the bishop as well. I really like it as an idea, and it becomes quite a problem for me. But I think I figure out a pretty good way around it. We go queen d2, finishing our development. The rooks are connected. This is still a problem. Apparently, by the way, c3 is an idea here, which is crazy. Taking doesn't really help much because we're still attacking your knight. And then the knight comes to d5, and then we get c4 in. Maybe not straight away because I don't really want this to happen. So he actually wants the sacrifice there, which actually is similar to what was played, but slightly different move order. We go queen d2 to back this up because right now we're threatening bishop takes, pawn takes, and then queen takes is going to be absolutely devastating with some knight f6 ideas. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and then you have to give back the knight, and I'm just up a ton of pawns. In fact, we can have a look at that. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and then you've got to be very careful of knight f6. So it's wanting queen d8 to add another defender there, but if they waste another move, then I think knight f6 is devastating. Apparently not the move. Oh, you go knight g5. Yeah, because there is no longer any h6 pawn preventing that. So they have to trade off there, at which point check happens. King goes that way, and then you start to push h6. Very, very scary stuff. Threatening almost a promotion on move 21, which is crazy. So you see the ideas are there, right? And you've got to be very careful. My opponent chose bishop f8, which the computer does not like. I thought it was a good defensive move. Because you sort of x-raying the defense of the h6 pawn. I don't know why the computer doesn't like it, but I calculated bishop takes h6 works. Now, to be honest, I didn't do a full calculation of this move. My thought was bishop takes, right? If pawn takes, then knight takes. And I think I'm fine here because I get some queen g5 or knight takes f7 if they leave it there. By the way, if they don't take this, then I'm just going to move it back and be up a pawn. Okay, so they have to take, and then the knight takes. Like we said, if they do anything else, some queen g5 or knight takes f7, I think is great. And then if we take it, then again we're going to take back. The king is completely cut off, and then we're going to get some knight g5, which is going to be really nice again. So that was my thought process behind it. It was more intuitive than stone cold calculation, but I think I was justified in saying it can't really go wrong, so we might as well, right? You know. So and the computer agreed. It gave it a brilliant move. Nice move order here though. Bishop takes knight, just quickly preventing knight g5. But then you see we have the attack on the rook. The problem is this sneaky knight here completes its plan and comes to d5. And here I really want the move rook e4. The problem is if we go rook e4 straight away, they have f5. And it's saying checks and maybe there's some perpetual here as white. But if you en passant, you just give them exactly what they want. The knight still controls these two squares. Although it's saying you sacrifice the rook. And after there, maybe... oh, it wants queen h8. And this is saying about even somehow. Wow. Oh, because you just go back here. And then this is completely safe, apparently. That is crazy, crazy, crazy. And it's saying it wants some sort of, I guess, perpetual here. Or you just play on and it's just even. Wow, that is crazy. But the idea is we can't go rook e4 straight away because of f5. Very annoying. So I found this very cool move. I think the computer doesn't quite like it, but I love it actually. C4. C4 is slow, and I am proud of myself for seeing a slow move when I could have tried a fast move, because I tend to rush my calculations. And the point is they can en passant. But then once we take back, we're threatening c4 again and they can't really stop us. They could try. They could try, I guess, c4 themselves, but I think we just take. And if the queen takes, then we've got rook e4 with a tempo, right? And we're going to get rook g4 and hopefully win the game. So they can't really stop c4 again. The problem is they have f5 here. Now, the computer doesn't like f5. I thought it was a great move. Rook b8, apparently the best move, just getting rid of the pin. Makes sense. And then d4. I don't know why you play d4. I guess you want to infiltrate this way around. I can't really see that being amazing, but the computer likes it. I'll take its word. But I thought f5 was great because the problem is if I take, and apparently I miscalculated this because I thought this was fine for black. After this, I didn't see the follow-up, which is c4. I thought they just secure everything. They go like queen g7, and they're safe. But c4, I forgot that this knight is actually still pinned to the rook, so I'm going to get some material back, which will leave us to be about even, except I've got a ton of pawns, and their king's super weak. So that's got to be a good position. So the computer says go queen g7 here, trade off, and then take. And if knight takes, there's a cool trick actually of rook takes e6, which is crazy. And the point is after rook takes, bishop takes knight, and you've got a fork on the rooks, which is so, so cool. So it goes into a rook endgame. The problem is we have 3 connected passed pawns. And yes, we're down 1 pawn on this, and the pawns are slightly loose, but these pawns here should just steamroll and should win if played correctly. I unfortunately missed that and went straight for c4 rather than en passant, which made life slightly more difficult for me. Gone from about a plus 2.7 advantage to a 1.1. And the trick is knight takes e5. And to be honest, I was slightly scared here. I've got nowhere to go really with my bishop. I don't want to take because the queen can always come back to g7. I heavily considered taking. And then we've got the fork here to worry about as well on the king and the rook. So I was very happy with this move as well. Bishop g2. Very, very slow move. You know, you keep the pressure on the rook. The position hasn't ultimately changed. And this could actually be a problem now taking. Maybe some f4 idea as well. Knight b4. I thought was a good try, looking for some knight takes d3 or maybe even knight c2, although my coach, I think, preferred knight d3 for the counterplay. Apparently knight g4 was better with the attack on the queen. I don't see why you can't check here and then trade off. But I guess this is slightly more even. We are just up a pawn in this situation. So not great. So the computer actually wants us to just move back. Control some of these squares. And be generally annoying. There are threats of perpetual checks. You've got to be very, very careful. But the computers are going to compute, you know. Anyway, our opponent went knight b4, which I think is a great move. Knight g4, the computer says gives more play, but I like this, and we take here. And I thought actually the best move might be to just ignore the bishop, or maybe just go for the fork. Our opponent unfortunately made a slight mistake here with rook takes a8, because here we just have queen takes e6 check with a double attack on the knight, which is unfortunate. They go back, and here it is a completely winning position. I did manage to mess it up, trying to be clever. The correct move here is just check. Completely winning. King h8, and then the computer wants queen f6, but I think h6 is just fine. Knight takes h6. I think you've got to give up the knight for the pawn either way. So if they go this way, then h6. and you can't really prevent this, so you've just got to take it this way. And I think the difference between going to h8 and f8 is the check that comes with it, because you're sort of forced back here, which isn't nice. So I think that's the difference. I don't really know. But instead of that, I decided to try be clever and go h6, which goes from actually a +5 position to in fact plus 6.5 all the way to a 2.1. So it's still good, but yeah, we missed the clean win because I was trying to be fancy. My thought process was that if they go here to avoid stuff, if they go here, then I just push, I think. And if they go here, I think I throw this check in, and that's not nice. Actually, I think it was if they go here, I go here, which is very similar to what happened. No, Queen E7, Queen F6. Oh, Queen F6. Looking for this, which is just mate. And if the knight moves, then this is going to be very nice indeed. Oh, the knight can't actually move, so you kind of just stuck here. I thought if they go like up, then we have like takes, and then king takes, and then check has to be like mating or something, at least. Unfortunately, I missed that black can, I think, go either square. I think this is better. I don't see why they can't go c6. Is a mistake because of queen takes f5. Oh, and then you're threatening with... What's the difference, though? Queen takes f5, apparently the only move. Queen takes h6. Rook e6. I don't see what the difference is, because surely that's the same either way. So this is not what was played in the game. They played queen d6, but I played h7, actually. Why can't they take this? Because of rook e6 again. But then we have... I'm confused. I'm confused at the difference, to be honest. But I saw h7 as a move, which is quite cool. And the point is, if king takes, then we take this. So the king goes back into the corner. Not into the corner. They go to g7. I could try trade the queens here and play this out, but the two knights against the rook is something I could easily mess up, and I really wanted to win, so I kept going with queen takes f5, which apparently just brings it to about even, because we're really struggling to defend this pawn, and there are threats of perpetual checks as well. Queen g6, apparently a miss. Queen f6 better, because you're hitting the rook, maybe, I don't really know, but I think queen f6 also covers any dark squared checks as well, which I think is why it's slightly better. Again, not quite sure on the difference. And then we go queen f3. Apparently, again, a miss. The computer wants you to trade, because the computer's just going to win that, right? But I went queen f6, hitting the rook, defending d3, potentially. I don't think we can really stop them taking it, but we can get some counterplay for the pawn. Rook d8, hitting the pawn again. Very, very natural. And then I tried this tricky move, rook e4. Apparently a miss. Rook e7 is the correct move. I don't really know why. I guess maybe you pick up some things. I don't think you've really got any counterplay against the king. Actually, you're threatening h8 queen, which is really quite cool, actually. No, rook takes f7. Even better, even better. Even better. Drag the king away, you're left with a queen. Very clever. Very, very clever. But there is some tactics, it turns out, against that. But I decided to go for rook e4 with some ideas potentially of rook g4 with the pin on the queen. Unfortunately, there are some like knight g5 ideas, or maybe even knight e5 ideas to watch out for, so it doesn't quite work. The computer actually classes rook e4 as a blunder. Rook e7 is just a win, apparently. And then takes. I go queen e2, setting up some traps, hopefully, which luckily my opponent fell into with king takes h7. Very unfortunate move. Rook d4, which I think I saw, maybe forcing a trade-off. And it's saying this is about even the 2 rooks for the knight. They're picking up this pawn. Depends if we can push these, but with the queens on the board, the checks are going to be very, very annoying. Luckily for me, my opponent took the h-pawn with the king. I think taking with the queen's slightly better. No, just as bad. Because then you've got this, which is crazy. Anyway, the problem with king takes h7 is we just have a3. Because this rook's only defended by the knight, so we kick away the defender, and we are just free to take the rook. They can go for this, which I think is quite smart, but I think eventually I will pick up this knight with some check, hopefully, with the king. Okay, it's time to finish this, right? So we throw in the check, which apparently not the best move, but I think most things work in this situation. Queen f3 apparently better. Don't ask me the difference. We checked king g7, and then here we can just pick up the pieces. If they go for queen f8, we have rook h7, very fancy move. Apparently rook g4 is better, which I can see. But if you want it to be fancy, rook h7, forcing king takes really, and then we just pick up the queen. So they just move back. We pick up the knight, and here we are just up the exchange with 2 pawns that are going to march. They go knight g5. We throw in the check with the queen, check again, and then force a trade-off with queens, and this should be not too big of a deal to win. And here my opponent resigned. So, a very fun game. That was my highest rated win ever in standard chess. And I think a really cool example of how the King's Indian attack should be played. Up to a certain point, because I definitely did mess it up, as I always do. But if you are curious about playing this, I would highly recommend giving it a go. If you want something against the French, or if you want a specific thing with knight f3, highly recommend it. And I mean, this maneuver, right, with the knights is one of my favourite things in the game ever. So you just can't not. Like, you go on a walk with your knight in the middle of the opening. Like, how can you hate that, you know? And then there's all these sacrificial ideas, which are just so amazing. Again, Bobby Fischer is the person to watch. If you are wanting to learn more about this opening, he absolutely mastered it. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like if you liked. Please subscribe if you really liked. And I'll catch you guys all later. Bye-bye.